Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Are you ready to pop your cork? In the left corner at 6'4", 242 pounds, with a record of 45-0, the undisputed.
Hey, Michael.
Hey, Will.
Hey, how many bottles of wine have you had?
Well, Will, it's not the wine. I'm just so excited about the podcast.
Yeah, I am too. This is not a boxing match. This is We Know Texas Vino.
Salute.
Welcome back, everybody, to We Know Texas Vino podcast. This is your host, and I want to say we're out here at Siboney Cellars. I said it correctly. I even got the look that I said it correctly. I'm so happy about that because it just took me a week to figure out how to say it correctly. So we're out here in a beautiful, beautiful, gorgeous location out here. And first off, I'm going to say this. If y'all have not been out here to this location at Siboney, y'all need to come out here. I mean, it's absolutely gorgeous. You know, just driving in, seeing the vineyard, and then coming up into the tasting room and seeing the tasting room is just absolutely drop dead gorgeous. But we're here in Johnson City with Miguel and Barbara
Lecuona.
I got ready to say it, and Miguel looked at me, and I'm like, oh, man, I forgot how to say this. I mean, I just like every word in my head just went out, and I had no words to say.
It's okay. That's why you have to ask us about Travis and Hot Shot. That'll take us full circle.
Brings it all in.
Oh, my gosh. So before we get digging deep into this episode, Miguel and Barbara, tell us what we've drank so far. And on top of all that, what y'all actually gave us to eat. I mean, I'm sorry. That's just like one of the best things here.
Well, we were happy to meet today here at Siboney. Will, you came in and we opened a bottle of Barbara's sparkling Trebbiano. We call it Bianco de Blanco. It's our first chance to do completely white grape for Blanco County. And that's how we took the name for the Trebbiano.
Which was actually amazing, by the way.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. So that's, I think, the third sparkling that we've made. We don't have sparkling equipment in-house, but we do method champenois. So we do our second fermentation in bottle. That's where we get the bubbles. So we make our base wine, and then we add another yeast starter, mix that into the wine, put it into the bottle, and then we ferment it over time in the bottle. So that's our first white sparkling.
Well, the very first sparkling we did was a 2019 vintage. It was Coral Estrellas. Mm-hmm. And we featured that actually in the Oak Grove when we came to this site here. And I remember it was such a special wine because we were savoring pretty much every bottle that we possibly could.
Wow.
Yeah,
it was a lot of fun to enjoy that.
It was fun. We were talking about that when we were outside serving in the Oak Grove. We were in all kinds of weather. People would drive up in their cars. It would be pouring down rain. They didn't want to get out. So Miguel would walk up to the cars, saber a bottle, give them a glass, and just pour the wine as they sat waiting for the rain to stop.
I love you just said saber the bottle. Like bring out the big old knife and just cut it off.
Yeah.
I love it. So we did sparkling already. So we did, what was the rosé we had?
Then we did a rosé. It was 100% Counoise from Tokyo Vineyard up in the High Plains. Counoise is a French varietal, and we brought that grape in specifically to make a rosé.
Nice. And then we had a red also. What was the other one?
So the first red that we did was a blend. It's called Travis, and it is a GSM, so Grenache Syrah Mourvèdre. And we try to do Travis every vintage. The blend percentages change a little bit. But Travis is one of the foundational wines for Siboney. That's the first red that we ever made.
Nice.
When we can get Syrah in quantity, we like to consider that for a single varietal. In 2017, we had to blend for Travis. And with Grenache is also a little bit of a struggle to find quality, and as you worked with it also to find enough of it.
Right.
You can do a lot of things with it. Mourvèdre, Texas has learned how to do great Mourvèdres in a lot of different vineyard settings and situations. So it depends really on what the harvest brings in. We've done Syrah as a single vineyard and a single varietal, and this is the third vintage of Travis that we've put together now as a GSM.
Nice. And then what are we drinking right now?
Right now we are drinking Malbec. This is 100% Malbec. This is from a little vineyard in Meta, Texas. It is Chalice Vineyard, and he's a very small grower, and right now we're the only people that source grapes from him. He originally planted 6 acres of Cabernet Sauvignon and 6 acres of Malbec. And for the Malbec, it has 2 different clones, a clone 9 and clone 10.
Okay.
And, we talk a lot about vineyards and microclimates and how things can be so different, even though they're side by side. These 2 clones couldn't be more different. They look different. They taste different. So we harvest them. We keep them separate. We do all of our fermentations separately. We age them in barrel independently. And I originally had an idea that we would try and taste these 2 side by side and just see how different these clones could be. But when you put them together, it is the most beautiful wine. So
really,
this is clone 9 and clone 10.
Nice. I will have to say, just looking at this, first off, it looks very inky to me. Mm-hmm. And the legs on this thing is, well, we're just going to stop right there.
Malbec is not an easy grape to work with. It's late ripening. It's very hard to get it past sort of that vegetal, not quite ripe stage. So we make a lot of effort to make sure we hang our fruit as long as we have to be able to get the characteristics that we want out of a particular variety.
Nice.
It's one of the stories we tell in the winery quite a bit too. Barbara's experience started in the vineyard. She's done a lot of work in a lot of different vineyards up in the High Plains. Her footprints are on all the vineyards that we work with. And she drives our Ram dually with a gooseneck trailer. She's forklift certified, so she's not a ceremonial title. This is the job.
Right.
And the most important part of her job, I think, is this late ripening component to it. It's really assessing in the vines with the grower, deciding on those picking days.
Right.
And when it comes to this kind of an option for Malbec, it makes a huge difference to be able to take it all the way to where it needs to go.
Interesting. Okay, so now when you just said Dodge Dually truck with a gooseneck trailer on, I'm picturing you, your boots, your pants tucked into your boots, and you're walking out there and you're telling, get out of my way, I got places to go.
Sometimes that's the case, and sometimes it's these flip-flops, which is more often than anybody would like it to be. I'm sure it's not the really safety footwear that I should be wearing, but
who cares about safety as long as you're making wine?
You can only tell your wife so often to not wear the flip-flops on the forklift, and when she says, okay, you're on the forklift, and then I say, well, okay, flip-flops.
If I'm going to do that, I need to be comfortable. That's all.
Exactly. Oh man. Well, before we get deep into the show, I'm going to go ahead and talk about our social media right quick. So you can find us on Facebook at We Know Texas Vino. You can also find us on our website at weknowtexasvino.wine and also .com. Also, you can find our podcast and this episode on any podcasting platform out there. Give us a 5-star rating. Give us some feedback. We love hearing what y'all love about our show, what you want us to hear. Give us some winery suggestions. We're always wanting to hear what you have to say about this. So we love providing y'all the best content possible out there. So you're listening to We Know Texas Vino, episode 69 at a beautiful, beautiful place called Siboney Cellars in Johnson City. Correct? We're in Johnson City, right? Okay,
yes,
awesome.
sir.
So let's get into this. First off, we're having a really great time. I love these people already. Michael's not here, so I'm going to do this in tradition of Michael. I'm going to send adoption papers to y'all so y'all can adopt me.
We're going to make you work.
That's okay. I'm no stranger to work. So
he has pruning shears. He's already talked about that.
Yeah, I know how to do that.
He's got skills.
I've got knife too, so I can cut things.
Super.
So let's really talk about y'all first. Okay. So one of the things we love about this podcast, people love about this podcast, is we get to know y'all on a personal level. And you started talking about this. So now it's time for Miguel to tell us that story so we can match them up. Okay. Are you ready for this?
Sure.
How did y'all meet?
We met in wine school, of all things. I was living and working in Texas. I've lived and worked in the state most of my life. We moved here as a family in 1970. I've been up and down many, many different cities in Texas. I was living in Austin at the time. This is probably 2005, 06. Mm-hmm. And I'd begun to be very interested in wine, but I still had a corporate career. And there was a program taught by a UC Davis grad. He was a professor, and he was also a Philadelphia native, of all things. So he started a wine school in Philadelphia. Do you know what he called it? The Wine School of Philadelphia, which I thought was a great name for a wine school in Philly. You know,
absolutely.
I mean, there's no wines or no grapes growing in Philly.
There is in Pennsylvania. Just like every state has a vineyard in the country, Pennsylvania does have
Really?
a wine industry
Yeah,
growing.
it does.
And even east of there in New Jersey, there's things for you to investigate there one day. You wouldn't believe it, but it's true.
Yeah, I'm not. I'm gonna stay in Texas.
I don't blame you. That's why I always come back. In fact, that was one of the questions we had, Barbara and I had to answer, is if we become engaged, do you think you would end up wanting to relocate to Texas? Because that's where I've always ended up. I've left and come back many times. But in Philly, there was a wine school program there, and I wanted to take this course because this UC Davis grad, Keith Wallace, was an outstanding teacher. And Barbara happened to live in Philadelphia. She was running a business, raising a daughter, minding her own business. Her only leisure time really was wine, and she was in the class. So we met in wine school there, and we struck up a friendship and then began to travel together from our different towns, but to the same place. And one of the trips we ended up taking together took us to France. We went to Bordeaux for a week.
Oh, wow.
And it was a beautiful trip. It was, of course, to be in Bordeaux, to be in French wine country during the growing season it's a revelation. It was beautiful and historic and cultural, and all of the things that we appreciate about wine were very much in evidence there. And that really became foundational for us. And we came back and we ended up deciding to become engaged in October of 2007. But she did say, if you want me to come to Texas, you're going to have to show it to me. So she and Brittany came down in the spring, which was perfect. I loaded the deck. So it was bluebonnet season, wildflower season, and I took her straight to Enchanted Rock.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
There was no going back after that.
That was full commitment right there.
Yeah, he brought me at the most beautiful time in Texas, and then we moved here in the hottest summer on record.
Honeymoon was over.
Oh, man. That was in what? That hottest time was what, 2010?
Yeah, 2011.
Yeah, I remember when I was doing
It was
that.
a scorcher.
I was working for a city, and I had to actually be on top of Barnes & Noble's running network cable and putting new security cameras in. And we had to get up there at 6 in the morning so we can get done by 10, so we didn't have to be up there anymore. Yeah, I remember that.
Sounds like a harvest morning.
Yeah, it does.
Oh, man, mercy. That was death right there.
Well, I had never lived in the Northeast, and we were married in 2008, and we were maintaining a long-distance relationship, and that kind of takes us into where we ended up with what you've got in the glass here. Because to spend the time between trips, we would end up playing Scrabble. Not Words with Friends, because that wasn't invented at the time. This is the actual game. So you're talking about laying out the boards, telling each other what the moves are, and then eventually we did find a certified Hasbro online version where you could keep track of it. And I'm good at this game. Okay, this is colors, numbers, and letters.
He told me he was good at this game. He warned me how good he was at this game.
And I was.
You were.
And then she ended up beating me 7 times in a row.
Oh, wow.
So I said, all right, hotshot, that's enough of this.
Okay, wait a minute. Now, the question here I'm going to ask, are you sure she beat you or you let her win?
No, are you kidding? I remember the text very well. I said, what are you doing here? She goes, I am determined to go out. And she did and got the 50-point bonus, and that was that. And that was her trick. Then you could never finish the game ahead of her because she'd always get anyway, so that's how that worked. So I said, hotshot, that's too much. And I had never even called anybody that name, and she had never been called it. But the next morning, she changed her text name to Hotshot. All of a sudden, her emails were referencing Hotshot, and she owned it. So in 2008, when we were married, she made matchbooks. We were married in Las Vegas. So we have ceremonial matchbooks that made, and it says Travis and Hotshot, February 15th, 2008. And that's the foundation for our whole program. And the basic thesis is wine is love.
That is absolutely a beautiful story right there. I mean, everything that anybody ever, have y'all thought about making a movie out of this?
No movies, just wine. So we took that and the Travis story is as important as the Hotshot story. When we were dating early on, Miguel had made reservations at a new Cuban restaurant that was in Philadelphia, and we were very excited to go there. I'd never had Cuban food before. I thought this was going to be amazing. And as we were waiting for our table, the hostess said, Travis, party of 2, your table's ready. And Miguel got up and started walking away. And I was like, hey, what are you doing? who's this Travis guy? And he said, hey, my name's Miguel. My last name's Lecuona. Nobody can pronounce it. So I go by Travis on all of my reservations. And this is true. Everybody can pronounce Travis.
I mean, if you're in Texas and Travis, if you don't know the county, the city, or the colonel, what good are you there really?
Okay, so I have to tell you a story about that also. Okay, so I do a lot of back when I worked for AIG, I did a lot of training, and I would walk in and tell everybody my name was Ahmed Shabazz Jenkins. Okay. But my badge would say Will Donahue on it. Okay. And they would start laughing about that. And I'm straight faced about it. And I'm saying, what are you laughing about? And they said, your name is not that. It's Will Donahue. I'm like, no, my real name is Ahmed Shabazz Jenkins. My American name is Will Donahue. And they're like, and so I made a full backstory. Like my dad's from Middle East. My mom is from Louisiana. And that's how I got the name. And they're like, okay, so why did you come up with Will Donahue? And I was like, well, I needed an American name. And Will Donahue is so American. But they're like, well, Will Donahue is actually Irish. So I'm sitting there, and once I tell them the story, they're all like straight faced, and they're like, okay, and I've sold them on this now, and now I'm laughing because of this. So I know how you feel,
It just makes things easier.
It just makes things easier. And
maybe I should have trusted them more. I mean, it was a great Cuban restaurant, but in Philly they didn't have a Cuban host. It was a gringo.
Oh, of course.
Travis was the easiest.
Philly.
Yeah, I love telling that story. So and I love that story. That's a great story out there.
Then, so what do you think Barbara's first two wines were that she made? The first white that came out was a blend, and it was a Rhone blend, and I insisted that we should name it Hot Shot. So that's where we ended up for that.
And the first red was a red Rhone blend, which was Travis.
So we always have that as part of the program. Then a Travis and Hot Shot will be on the menu.
That is an amazing story. I absolutely, positively love that story right there. That's a very unique story to y'all, and that will, man. I'm glad. Thank y'all for sharing that with us.
Don't cry, Will. Remember, you said no crying.
It's a pleasure. I might cry.
I
might
cry.
Hang
on.
So we got married in February on the 15th. So after Valentine's Day, but we have actually been able to release Travis and Hot Shot in February for Valentine's Day, because February at Siboney is Wine is Love Month. But wine is love all the time.
Yeah, wine is
but
always
especially
love.
in February.
Have y'all thought about getting those hearts that you slide together, those glass containers that are hearts that slide together?
No, we'll never do that.
We do get candy hearts that say Travis and Hot Shot.
I love how he just looked around me. He's like, that's a great idea, but I'm going to tell you no.
We actually did get a dragon this year, though. It is the year of the dragon. So
okay.
If you look on top of the cigar humidor, you'll see one of several that we were giving away for people who were born year of the dragon. We hosted a nice dinner for Valentine's. And in fact, that was one of the prizes. If you were a dragon baby, you got a dragon.
That is cool. I like that. I like that a lot. So, okay, y'all met each other, but before y'all met each other, where did y'all's love of wine come from? I mean, y'all just didn't decide to go to wine school one day and say, okay, where did that love come from?
For me, I think it started just like early corporate career, finally going out to a dinner and having a nice wine served at the table and thinking, wow, why is this so different from any other wine that I've had? And then that just began a journey, visiting Napa, Sonoma, and tasting different wines, trying different things, and realizing that there was this entirely enormous world of wine that I had been unaware of. And it just led to an exploration of, why do I like this? Why don't I like that? What are all these different varietals? And so in whatever spare time I had, it just became a little bit of a passion to learn. And to me, now as a winemaker, I'll often say to people as we're doing a tour around the winery, before science, wine was magic. Mm-hmm. Nobody knew how this happened. Where did these flavors come from? Where did these aromas come from? How is this all coming together to build this beautiful, this beverage that is not a beverage, it's an experience. So it was really just that. And for me, wine is also a sense of place and time. Mm-hmm. There's really nothing else that you can have in this world that you can have from 15 years ago, 20 years ago, 60 years ago, and say, this is from that time. What was happening at that time? What was the weather? What was going on in the world? And to me, that's still fascinating. And I think it's a way to preserve a lot of history just as an individual. We started collecting wines to commemorate birth years and anniversaries. And, my daughter was born in 1991, so we held back a bottle from that vintage to serve her at her wedding. And it's something that brings people together. But to me, it's still magical, even though I understand most of the science of it.
Right.
Science doesn't understand all of the science of it yet, but it's just an amazing product.
Well, I love what you just said there because, okay, so they always say that music will take you back to that time and place. But what you just said, wine will do the exact same thing. And I have that happen to me all the time because there's been several times where I've had open a bottle of wine and I drink it and I sit and think about a time and place in life. Whether I bought the bottle, who I met when I got that bottle, or what I was doing, let's say 20 years before I got that bottle. But sometimes that bottle will make you remember something in life and just take you back to that happy place, that sad place, that whatever moment in that time. I like that, what you just said there. So what about you, Miguel? How did your love for wine come about?
I started my working life was actually started in restaurants. I was a bus boy, and then I shucked oysters of all places in Laredo, Texas, that great oyster capital of the world. There was a man who brought a restaurant in from Corpus Christi, actually, Mike Singleton. He built the Black Diamond Oyster Bar in both of those locations. And I remember shucking oysters there, and then Laredo finally got an interesting restaurant that was going to also do seafood, and it was called Pelican's Wharf. And I remember waiting tables there the first time, and that I won a wine contest once, as when we were able to serve at 18. So I began to see the connection between food and wine pretty early, just to note it. But it was a trip to France on my own in 1990. I was working at Frito-Lay. I was in product management, and I had a week off during fall, and I wanted to go to France. And another guy who was an Argentinian, actually, he traveled there. He goes, I'm going to meet some people there. Why don't we just go? So we met. This seems to be the theme of my travel. It's always to meet somebody in Paris, which is how you and I travel. So we actually flew to Paris separately. We landed. I remember meeting him right in front of Notre Dame on the little tiny bridge, the Petit Pont. We went to Champagne together. I had never seen it. I had never been. And driving around through that area, I rented a car, and I just came to this four-way intersection in the middle of the vineyard. And the hillside had changed colors. The vines were the colors of the fall in France. And I said, I'll be darned. This is amazing. And I had never experienced anything like that. I had never went back to France until you and I went together in Bordeaux. I don't even think I've told you that story.
No,
Oh, wow.
I didn't know that.
This is the first ever. This is an exclusive.
Wow.
So I think wine is culture. This is something we actually talk about. Wine is not nature.
No, it's not.
Vinegar is nature.
Yes.
Wine is culture. It's the intervention of farming and cellar work that creates this expression of a location, a place, and a time.
Yep.
And when you pull that cork, you can capture all of that back.
Yeah, they back in 1985, I think it was, they actually found some old Thomas Jefferson wines that he had purchased that they never shipped to the United States. And the winery who actually had it actually built a wall up and made it like it was a standard wall. So that way the Germans wouldn't come and siege those wines. And the people who owned that building passed away and no one knew about it. And they accidentally found it one day. Wow. Yeah. And so they were opening those corks. Well, let me rephrase that. According to what I read, that it was an accident that bottle got opened. The glass was so old and brittle that when they walked by and accidentally hit a corner, it just shattered. But they said that aroma, you could like almost smell what it was like 100 years ago, 150 years ago. And that is just crazy, to think that you can take a bottle of wine and you can open it and you can almost smell what it was like.
It's the magic of the old world, especially. They have history in their bottles, and in these vintages, they've been through these events. We think a lot about the weather and current events and what happens this year, and our little vineyard is in its fourth growing season. And you think about what it means to have grown grapes through phylloxera, through the time of the of the revolution, right? Coming out of that and then into through the wars and the Depression era and everything that has survived there. But the most important component of any estate winery is the vineyard. That what is surviving.
Right.
And if you can just keep your eye on that, that's the most critical part of what we're doing, is trying to coax this new vineyard into a moment where we can produce something that expresses not only the site, but who we are and how we want to come forward with something for Texas.
Right. And, I was reading some articles the other day that there were some wineries in California pulling up 100-year-old vines. Now, these vines have seen, and I'm not going to say but they've seen a lot of things that have gone through multiple fires, multiple wars. They've seen the climate change from one thing to another. And I'm thinking to myself, why would you want to pull up 100-year-old vines? Those got characteristics. Those have, personality, if you want to say, on them. Whereas a vine that's only 5 years old doesn't have that. Why would you want to do that? And I'm not in charge of that. That's not my deal. But I do know if excuse me, if I had a choice to pull up a 100-year-old vine to a 5-year-old vine, I would definitely pull a 5-year-old than a 100-year-old. I mean, it's just to me, it's common sense.
We talk about that too. If you look at the logo of Siboney, if you look at the bottle, you see on the top of there is a design, right? It's a window. The window itself is called a quatrefoil. It is an architectural design you would see in Spain. You would see it in San Antonio, actually, on the Mission San Jose, the rose window.
Yep.
It's also on the Cathedral of Havana at the very top there, so where my father is from. Of course, it has stained glass, and we were interested in that, but we wanted to tie this together with our journey to Bordeaux and into wine. So inside our logo, I have a picture here that I took of a 50-year-old Cabernet vine, just to your point. This is bud break from April of 2009 at Chateau Haut-Brion. It's an old vine cab. You can see the branch behind it there, but the bud itself has all of the promise of harvest to come for that. So we took this picture, set it into the bottle logo, and it's at the top of our bottles, and it reminds us that even at our age, we can renew every year. That's the point of everything that we're doing here, and it ties into exactly your point about finding the old vines and trying to make sure that we don't lose sight of what they can present. Oh yeah, I mean, I love how you just describe that. That's like the best way to describe it. And a lot of people who are new to the wine industry, whether they're drinking or making, sometimes you need to stop and think about that for just a moment, because you got to understand where everything came from and where it's going. Once you understand where it came from, then you'll understand where it's going. Yeah, I really do like that. So now that comes a very hard question here. Okay, are you ready for this one? Now, the Siboney. Okay, I did a little bit of research on this, and it's actually very interesting where the name came from. And actually, I'm hearing some of it in the background. Okay, so this is actually more for a Miguel thing. I don't know if you want to answer this one or not, Barbara, but I think Miguel can answer it probably best.
We can probably both answer it. Siboney stands for a lot of things, and it is all surrounding Cuba. So Miguel's father was born in Havana. Miguel has a great uncle named Ernesto Lecuona, and he was a child prodigy and an amazing composer and pianist. And Siboney is one of the songs that he composed and wrote and has performed. And it is a song that has been covered by many, many, many people over a long period of time. It's been performed by Placido Domingo, Connie Francis, Bing Crosby. It is still performed today by Raul Malo, who is the singer for the Mavericks out of Austin. And it's a beautiful love song. And although Ernesto has written many great works and all of them beautiful, this was just a song that spoke to us. The lyrics, if they were translated into English, sometimes said, come to Cuba, have a party, dance on the beach. But the actual lyrics, it's a very passionate love song. Just saying, Siboney, I would die for your love. And for us, wine is love. We've talked about that, and that is love just among people. It's forming friendships. It's forming relationships and continuing those on through your life. So it was just a song that spoke to us, and we felt that it was appropriate for what we wanted to share with everybody through winemaking.
That is absolutely. I mean, I'm sitting here now trying to push my tear ducts back in.
Nothing more to add here.
Well, I when I saw that and I looked it up, it was absolutely the most gorgeous thing I've ever heard. I mean, I've heard names from all the different wineries, and I love hearing how you come up with the name. But I want to say this: y'all are probably the most favorite story I hear about a name, because it's everything I've already heard so far. Is one key word is love. Love, 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 love. And love wins every time.
I'll give you another word too, and it's a funny word because Siboney does mean something Cuban for sure. If you see the word, if you know anything about it, that's the reference. Mm-hmm. And there aren't a lot of Cubans in Texas, but there seems to be one in every zip code, and they tend to show up here sometimes. Typically, this is typical. They'll come in a group. They'll come at the end of the day. They will not have made an appointment, and basically they'll just show up because they see the word. And they say, Siboney? I'll say yes. And they were very skeptical right away. I don't believe it. It can't be true. Lecuona? I said, yes, that's my great uncle. So then I have to show them my business card. I say, here's a picture. This is my dad. He's, everybody had a prime. This is my dad in 1945. He was a gymnast here. So
wow.
We trace the story back, and then eventually they come around to realizing this actually is something authentic.
Right.
And that's what we strive to do in everything. And it's not just a thing for Cuba. It's a thing for Barbara and I. We're not trying to be curated or elevated. We're trying to be authentic, just playing as much as we can to what we love,
right.
What we love about wine, and what we love about each other and the lives that we're creating here.
It's such an amazing story. I mean, I'm trying not to cry.
It's a happy story.
It is a happy story. And that's one thing I love about doing this podcast is I get to hear y'all's story, and that story translate into y'all's wine. You get to hear the love, the passion, the drive for what you have, and you put it into your bottle. And I think that's why a lot of people that I see on social media always brag about y'all's wines. Always. I've never seen one person not say anything good or amazing or just absolutely over the top about y'all's wines.
That's very kind.
It is. That makes me feel very, very blessed.
I mean, it's just, again, this is my third trip down here. My first trip, I didn't know a lot of the wineries. The second trip, I started learning and got information from, the locals. But this trip right now, this third trip here, I knew what I wanted, and I knew what I wanted to talk to, and y'all were one on my list. And so it's an honor to be sitting right here amongst y'all two that found y'all's passion, y'all's love in wine, and it brought y'all together to ultimately make a family out of it. And that, man, I can't say anything more.
Well, the first vintage we did is really to Barbara's complete credit. This is 2017 when we started, and like many wine lovers in Texas, we met some very important people on the crush pad at William Chris. William Chris is like the epicenter for what it means to be a Texas winery and to be to grow up mainly in the last 10, 15 years. There's been so much influx, but William Chris was at the foundation of it, and we met Doug and Tom Reed there from Hawk's Shadow. This is another one for your list if you haven't had a chance to visit them, or your listeners want a place to go in Dripping Springs. Definitely write down Hawk's Shadow and go. Worth your time.
Oh, wait a minute. You actually just mentioned that a while ago. Okay. I was fixing. Someone just mentioned that to me just a little bit ago. That was you. Yes.
Yeah, we met Doug and Tom, their brothers, and they were getting started in the wine industry. And as Miguel said, a lot of these relationships kind of started at William Chris. Everybody met each other. Anybody who was interested in getting started in winemaking in Texas or growing a vineyard would wind up meeting there. And so they planted their vineyards and started their winery. And we became friends over the years. And we were, Miguel and I had met friends of ours, Bill and Mary Ann Waldrop, and we all had a passion and an interest in wine. We met through wine tasting. All of our relationships seems to start with wine. So
that was thanks to Becker. Actually, it was a scheduled event at Boot Ranch, and Becker was hosting a wine. I call it wine journalism. I was doing photography and working for a lot of winery projects in town, and I couldn't go to that event. So you went.
So I went in his place. I met Marianne, and we hit it off. We spent a lot of time together. We all wound up having dinner together. And ultimately, at some point, they said, hey, if you're really interested in pursuing this, we would be happy to be involved in that. And at one point, we were sitting around a fire pit one night talking about it again after a really amazing trip to Napa together. And I just said, well, if we're going to do it, I guess I better start. So I enrolled in the viticulture courses at Texas Tech, started taking those classes, and that was 2016. And during that time, I had met a lot of winemakers out here, and I was offering to volunteer. I had volunteered in vineyards for a long time, but I said, hey, I just let me work in your cellar. I'll be your cellar rat. I'll do it for free. I just want to have the hands-on experience. I understand the concept of winemaking, but I actually want to do it. And I got kind of the same answer, usually a blank stare and a little head nod. And then finally somebody said, well, you're going to mess up your hair and you're going to break your nails. And I said, I got a hat and I got nail clippers. So let's give it a shot and we'll see how it goes. So I finally got a call in an early evening of 2016 that they could use some help. And if I was still interested, come on out. So I did. We worked until about 2:00 in the morning. I had an amazing time, and they said, we're gonna start again tomorrow at 9 if you want to come back. I canceled my hair appointment. True story. I had a hair appointment that morning. So I canceled that, and I showed up and I worked the entire harvest. And I think it was probably about 2 weeks in, and I just looked at Miguel and said, I'm really sorry. I want to make wine. So I also added the classes for winemaking at Texas Tech at that point.
Nice.
But that was not necessarily a Hawk Shadow story. That cellar work it took place right here.
It did. So that cellar work was with Ben Calais at Calais Winery, an amazing French winemaker down the road. And it was just a great learning experience. And it wasn't just about winemaking. It was about learning that you need to know how to operate a forklift, and you need to know how to pull a trailer, and these are all the other logistical things you have to do. You've got to wire a plug to match your equipment, and it's
there's a
great.
story with that because he's chuckling over there. There's a story with that.
There's just so many things.
You don't have to tell that story.
No, but there's so much more than just the winemaking to be able to do.
Why do you want to skirt about that? Because the fact that he started chuckling and you're like, no, and you you literally said no and then went on to the next topic. You
know what? Nothing caught on fire, nothing blew up. It's still working today, so I did all right. YouTube, thank you very much. So I've had some amazing mentors in this process. Ben is still, and Doug and Tom and Chip at Hawk Shadow. Without them, we would have never been able to begin this, because you go to school and it's like, okay, now what do I do? Where do I make this wine? My garage is only so big. So Hawk Shadow gave me the opportunity to go ahead and use their equipment, bring the fruit in, and barrel age our wines in their cellar for a few years, and that's really how it all got started.
Right behind us is a photo you can see there on the tapestry, and at the bottom you'll see 3 winemakers and the grower.
Okay.
That's Doug Reed, that's Ben Calais, and with Barbara. That's at Neil Newsom's vineyard in 2019.
Okay.
So the 3 of them are actually very simpatico when it comes to evaluating and assessing ripeness in the vineyard. They know that's where the work has to be put in first before it goes to the cellar. And I think that's what's created the foundation. None of the wineries, none of us 3 are big. Like we couldn't really fill up our own trucks if we were doing major orders for barrels. But the 3 together began to work on these logistical issues. They share transportation, they drive together. So they've worked out a lot of plans that make it somewhat easier to work on winemaking on an artisan level scale. There's some wineries that have more winemakers than these 3 wineries put together.
Right.
So it's really very hands-on, and that's exactly how we want it. That's how we like it.
No, we talked about this earlier. This is a a fairly tight-knit community of winemakers in Texas, especially all of us who are producing and are committed to producing 100% Texas wines. This is important to us to show that we can make beautiful world-class wines in Texas out of fruit that is grown here in our vineyards. We support our growers. We consider them to be partners. They work with us in the vineyards, and we have each other's backs. So, to do this on your own at this scale is a little bit difficult. We are very small. We don't have buying power of a big winery. But when we work together, it's very useful to be able to obtain the fruit that we want, and to have the growers operate at a level that we want to make the best wines possible.
Nice. I really do love what y'all have here. I mean, what you y'all telling the story here about y'all. This is what I love to hear about. It's where your passion, where your love, it falls in, and that's where it comes out into the wine. I love this story. So thank y'all for sharing this.
You're welcome.
So how did y'all end up finding this location where you're at right now? Because
you have to go back to if you remember your life before the pandemic, that's what we're talking about here, 2019, when you had time, right? You could evaluate things on a rational basis. You weren't just rushed into bidding wars and looking at things in a very constricted time.
Right.
Because that's exactly what we did to buy our house, which is horrible, to that moment.
It worked out okay.
In 22. That's fine. We're doing great. But in 2019, Barbara had 3 vintages by that time, 17, 18, and just getting started on 19. We were, the Waldrop partnership had come through. We were very excited as a foursome to decide where to go. And we looked at a number of properties on 290. Barbara and I, at the time, we were living in Fredericksburg. I was doing a lot of work with other wineries, so I've had a pretty good pulse on what was happening in the wine industry, where things were going. And from there, we really thought that the amount of wine that we make is really important. We're not going to be a 15,000 case property from the word go. We're going to start with quality, with Texas, and with our own winemaking. And if you do those 3 things, you are starting from a point of control. To make that work, you have to find a location that is not going to be overrun just by countless tourists coming through who are maybe not there for the reasons that you want to share your wine with. So we looked at Blanco County. We started actually where Foyt is now. That's a pretty good location, but it was just a little out of reach for what we thought at that time. I don't know where the numbers are nowadays, but it was $50,000 an acre then. So that was a substantial number in Fred. I can imagine that's got to be 5 or 6 times what it is, today. But looking at Blanco County, things were a little quieter. There were excellent wineries there with William Chris, Ron Yates, Ben Calais was there. So we thought maybe this could be a place where we could drop anchor and find a serious location to make the wine that we know we can do.
Right.
We looked at half a dozen places up and down. We actually had an offer on a place across the road. It didn't come through for TxDOT reasons, so we ended up coming back here. And the site you're on is called Marshall Ridge. And this has been a property for a few decades. And we are a commercial property on an HOA zoned plot. So we're 52 acres here with frontage on 290. And as you drove through, you could see that there's a 100-foot elevation change from the gate to the very top of the property. And it's beautiful. The obvious thing to say is the hill country is beautiful, but we didn't create that. All we did was organize this property so that we could all experience it together. So the dominant features include this limestone terrace, the ridge that comes around. It defines really the property.
Right.
Then you have cedar all over like you do in the hill country, but once we removed that cedar, it revealed this vineyard site that really captured our heart. There's a live oak grove in the center of the vineyard. We stipulate it's not the smartest idea to leave a forest in the middle of the vineyard. We know that. Because the truth is everything is trying to kill the vineyard, right?
Right.
Even the cute rabbits that are there.
It's nice to have a bird habitat right in the middle of your vineyard.
State bird, mockingbird, which you're forbidden to do anything about. He's there.
But I mean, he's going to at least eat the grasshoppers.
hopefully. But, we didn't want just a monoculture of grapes at any cost. We wanted this hill country culture.
Right.
And I wanted it to be tied into Barbara's winery, the production area and the hospitality area that we were working so diligently to design with the wall drips and develop something that could express everything in one place.
Right.
And in fact, the backstory is Marshall Ridge, this location, is governed by an HOA, and they said if you do a business, it has to be a single building. You can't do a logical distribution and start with a tasting room in one spot, a production area in a second spot, dry goods in a third. So we're actually working on a way to maybe evolve that. But right now, you have a 10,000 square foot building that does everything for Siboney.
Okay, so you said one word, and you said HOA.
Yes.
An HOA out here in the middle of nowhere in the country.
There are 7 properties directly behind us, 25 acres apiece with nice homeowners, and they defined this commercial area in front, and it's always been with a little deed restriction that says 1 commercial building per tract.
Did you tell them they also need to pay you all for all your time and effort that you're doing this for?
We're going to work on this. So, many folks that live in this HOA are members at Siboney, so that's a good thing. They're friends.
Get along great.
Okay,
Yeah.
That's fair enough. I mean,
It was a good design challenge for the architect, and she actually lives in the HOA too. So there was yet another serendipitous connection that came from that.
Oh man!
So the design of the space is really conforming to what the land wants it to do.
Well, we also wanted the winery to be part of the landscape and not just sitting on top of the property. So this is actually dug into the hillside, 16 feet underground as much as it could be. And a lot of that was really it's hot in Texas in the summer. This is our barrel cellar. These barrels have wine in them. We're aging it in here. So temperature control is very important to us. And even our tank room, our production side, that is also underground. So it's very useful during the heat of the summer in Texas to do that. But we also, as I said, we wanted to be part of this property. We weren't looking to just build some huge structure that would not conform to the beauty of the hill country.
Right. Which I have a very beautiful property, by the way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely gorgeous. So you get your building built up now. You got everything figured out. But this room that we're in right now, your barrel room. Okay, first off, I keep looking around. This is absolutely probably one of the most gorgeous barrel rooms that I've seen. And I've noticed something that I've not seen before. I've noticed that your barrel's on rollers. Okay, so
It's true.
I may need y'all have to demonstrate how those things work. Is it an automatic roller that rolls the barrel, or is it just rotates it up where y'all need it?
I saw this in Bordeaux, and then we went back and saw it a second time. This was a French company, Oxoline. It is a barrel management system designed to be efficient for small producers and to efficiently locate in small spaces. We had a design premise here. This space that we're in is not only barrel operations, it's a public space for wine for wine club members too. Just above it, you can see there's a loft. So we've got a membership loft up there. So you have hospitality and services as well, but we're standing on a wet work floor. You've got slot drains, you've got a hardened concrete floor with traction, and it's impermeable. And so, the barrels are set into a lattice. You can see it's almost like a honeycomb structure, right?
Yes. Yep.
You can reach every single barrel and do work independently without destacking them using a forklift,
Right.
which is very common on the traditional style barrel racks.
Correct.
So from that perspective, we've been able to efficiently make wine in this space and still use it in the way we would like to use it, because we love the feel of this room as well.
Right.
This is a system. It takes a little bit of getting used to when you're used to working on a traditional system, because on barrels stacked on top of each other, we just kind of climb up the racks. Can't do that when it's on wheels.
Right.
It's not a good idea.
Not a very
Even in
good.
flip-flops.
Even in flip-flops. So, the idea is you can actually fit more barrels in the space with this sort of honeycomb design. It's much easier access. So anytime you want to take a sample or taste it, it's very easy to get to. This system is designed to work in place. So once the barrel is placed on the system, we don't take it off. We fill it in place, we empty it in place, we clean it in place. And the wheels are great for, I like to stir my barrels, at least early in the aging process. And to stir a barrel, there's a tool that you can use, and it takes about 15 minutes to stir a barrel. When it's on wheels, it just takes 2 turns. And all of your lees are back up in suspension, and then you can let those settle back down. So anytime we would like to stir a barrel, we just manually turn it. You can use, there's a drill bit that you can use, so you can use a drill independently on each one if you want to do that. But it also allowed us, when we harvested our first estate harvest last year from our Merlot vineyard, we wound up with a very small harvest, but we have 4 barrels. We did that fermentation in barrel, and in order to punch that down, as we do, in a barrel, the way you punch it down is you turn it.
Right.
So this system allowed us to be able to do that very easily, to do those punch downs. And then after we pressed it, we cleaned those barrels, put it back in those same barrels to age. So it made it very cool. We do need a scissor lift to get all the way up to the top, so we can work on the barrels that are at the higher levels, but it really alleviates the need to run a forklift in here all the time, basically.
You know what you could do is, for that center beam right here, attach a bungee cord on it.
Have some wine angels.
Have some wine angels. And then just leave them there for a couple of days. Like, hey, I need you to mimic this here.
You can do that. We've talked about that.
Get those bad employees.
One of those times.
This is your punishment for doing what you're supposed to. I really do love what y'all have here. Y'all, I mean, I've gone to multiple wineries and I saw what they have in there. And I feel what y'all got in here, y'all are really innovating winemaking. In fact, actually, this roller system that y'all have for y'all's barrels, I've never seen it before, so that's why I had to ask about it. I've never seen it before.
We saw it on the right bank in Saint-Emilion at Chateau Fontblegade, which is a beautiful space owned by Americans in Bordeaux. Mm-hmm. They also have a vineyard, the Martin family. They have a vineyard in Napa as well. So we were talking to them about it, and it's beautiful. Now, they have a water feature in their barrel room that we envy. We almost did it, but we just couldn't quite get all the way there. Their property dates back to the Romans, so they have an archaeological fountain in the back of their vineyard, and it runs water through the space and into the barrel room and then forward. And so that's at the foot of this of their beautiful, enchanting cellar. So you can just see that with your mouth open. That's how we look at it. I can't believe you've got a Roman artisan waterfall going through here, but it's true. Well, we hit a spring. Barbara talked about the limestone construction. We were pushing the foundation into the side of the limestone terrace. There was a little seepage. This is the Edwards Aquifer zone for recharge. So we actually did some construction work to mitigate that. But we thought, isn't there a way to capture that seepage and then make our own waterway right through here? We just ran out of time. Just couldn't get there.
A jackhammer goes a long ways.
You know where to put it, right?
Exactly.
Right
and you got a lot of stone out here, so you got a lot of the easy part done. You just
we sure do.
Isn't that pretty? All the limestone you see is from the excavation of the work. This was done by J.K. Bernhard. They're a Kerrville-based construction company. Mm-hmm. They do large-scale work. They can handle this kind of a large project. So to see the unfolding of the site, we actually wanted to witness this. So Barbara and I started to serve here a year before we opened the winery. So in 2021, again, pandemic, if you recall, at that time, a lot of people in urban centers really long to be in the hill country, and this has always been true for Texas. The hill country is where you come to for your dreams and your memories, and it's been true for decades. It's beautiful here, mm-hmm. and it's comforting. So we set up outside. We developed a tasting room in the oak grove on that curve as you come around the parking lot there. Mm-hmm. We lit it, and we organized tastings there, and we had it. Engineering papers showing this is the site. This is how the building is going to be laid out. We would do walking tours up here. Now, we didn't have any power or any running water, so it felt very primitive because it was. There were moments there where we were bringing in our own ice and we were, fighting the elements. But the best part of it is that Texans were coming. Right. And when you have a chance to work and this kind of an industry and you get the energy from people who want you to succeed, you can't be stopped.
Right.
So we just kept at it for a year until we got this place open.
Nice. Well, I would definitely do that running water in here. You set it up, put plexiglass on the floor so people can actually see it and walk over it.
Mm-hmm.
I've got a hose back there.
Okay, I think this podcast is over now.
We talked about authenticity.
That's all I got right now.
Oh man. Y'all are great. I love y'all. So one of the things I actually saw on y'all's website that I really, really love to hear about is that y'all support local artists. Tell me about that.
We have part of what we do. We've talked about wine is love, and you hear about Siboney in the song. So it's actually important to us to have this expression. And there's a little bit of culture in this. And I'm not here to ram Cuban culture down anybody's throat.
Right.
But music and art does express the culture of a people and of a place. So we have a space and we are open to that. So we do have an exhibition from one of the very first, from the very first day that we opened. Zena Howe made some beautiful foil sculptures from wine capsules, and they are positioned over on the wall, a beautiful blue wall there. So it's like a rotating exhibit. We're going to probably feature somebody else in 2025, but it's been up for a few years. We also have a piano upstairs. If you look in the loft, there's a grand piano. It was a small gift I wanted to make for the winery. We bought a beautiful digital Yamaha grand piano. It's awesome.
Did you carry it up the stairs yourself?
Say again?
Did you carry that up the stairs yourself?
No, we had a forklift. That was the one time we used a forklift, and it was just then.
So we
the fact that I looked right at her, she's laughing. There's a story that goes with that.
So the piano, there's a lot of stories about the piano. One of the ladies that worked in the design of this building just came to visit the other day with her family. She hadn't been here since it was just completed, so she hasn't seen it with the barrels in it or anything. So she came last weekend and she was taking pictures, and I took her upstairs and she said, "Miguel's piano. There's Miguel's piano."
It was a little drawing on their architectural renderings. It was
serious?
going to be in there. We were committed to this. But it's a performance piano, and we do bring in artists to play there also.
Nice.
So art is it's visual. It's also very much involved in music. We have an idea, a very long-term idea. We're thinking about murals. If you've noticed, we have some concrete walls. We've got a lot of board form concrete. It's beautiful. And so also in the barrel room, you've got some nice spaces here. So we think about expressing art through culture through art, music, visually, and in the way that we work with the wine and food, actually, too. That becomes a big part of it.
And it ties into winemaking. People often ask, is winemaking a science or an art? And the truth is it's both. We use the science to inform us as we go along the way. But, when we're putting a blend together, or if we're just assessing the fruit that's coming in, what is the best expression that this fruit is going to become in a wine? And some of that is artistic. And, you were talking about music, just bringing back memories. And that's very true. There are aromas that do that. Wine does that.
Yes.
Music does that. And it's kind of tying the wine and the music and all of these things together. And it just creates a really wonderful atmosphere, and people really enjoy it. And we take our wine seriously, but we love to have fun.
Right.
So we love when people come here and just enjoy themselves, enjoy the wine and enjoy the experience. And, if you're interested in the Cuban culture, that's great. If you're not, it's okay too, because it's just not all about that. We have a lot of different things that we do here, a lot of different styles of music. We have an amazing group from Australia that has performed here several times, the Heart Collectors.
Wow.
They've been in this space, and acoustically, it's fantastic with the barrels in here. They're coming back in
Possibly the fall.
hopefully the fall.
Wow.
So we've done some concerts with those guys, and they're tremendous. So it's all about coming together in community, and it doesn't have to be one culture, but we do have a little bit of a base in Cuban culture, and the Cuban sandwiches are great. We have a cigar club. We have these amazing cigars that we have also that we pair with the wines. So we have a few different things that we do. And
even for Father's Day, I mean, just behind you is a little mural. Part of Barbara's talking about Cuban sandwiches. That came because on Father's Day 2 years ago, we roasted a whole pig and hosted a small domino game for Father's Day. It's something I wanted to do. My dad passed away in 2014, and we tell a lot of stories about going to Cuba. Barbara and I did have a chance to visit there in 2018, and so we talk about that. We've got some tapestry stories about that. We spent a lot of time in the cigar region in Cuba, which was fascinating in and of itself. So if you enjoy cigars, that's great. Everybody can have an opinion about that. But when you travel to a tobacco growing region with your winemaker wife, it's a completely different experience. And that's what really pushed us into doing this. It's not a novelty. We're not here to give you Havana Nights or have something like that. We really are thinking about agriculture and its connection to a people and to a place. And that became very important. So we tell a lot of stories about that. We've even tied it to one of the most important wines we have. While we were in Cuba, Barbara had in barrel Zinfandel that became a beautiful wine, and she has a whole story to tell about that. I don't know if we'll have time to reveal it, but that's something that we tell to our customers a lot about the port that is a cigar port named for a young man we met in Cuba.
Really? We always have time for good stories.
So we were in Cuba, and we decided as part of our trip just to take a tour of a beautiful location that was a tobacco farm. We actually didn't know at the time that it was harvest season when we were there. So we were doing a horseback tour of the property, and at the end of it, we wound up in one of the huts where they were curing the leaves. And the young man in that picture was rolling cigars in front of us. And he was talking about the entire process, not just about how they harvest when they know it's time to harvest, what the different leaves on the tobacco plants mean. And then he started talking about the first fermentation of the leaves. And then he started talking about the second fermentation of the leaves. And I said, wow, this is just like wine. And we continued on that conversation, and it changed everything I ever thought about a cigar in my life. And just that they're so similar, the process is similar, and that there is an art to it, and that this young man was so skilled at his art and how he was rolling these cigars and why he was doing it the way he was doing it, and describing the difference between what is sitting on a shelf commercially versus what he was hand rolling in front of us was really, really eye-opening. So this young man's name was Valdi. And at that moment, I knew that was going to be the name of our port. It'd be Valdi.
Okay, so I'm right now, this very rarely happens on my own podcast. I'm very speechless. Okay, so give me just a second to let me indulge into this just a moment. So my next question is, are y'all thinking about even trying to grow y'all's own tobacco, maybe to even do y'all's own Siboney's?
Well, things have to progress very deliberately. You're talking about a regulated business in wine and alcohol. Well, tobacco, of course, is highly regulated.
Right.
So the first step we took was to get a retail license in order to be able to present cigars.
Okay.
So the cigars we have are called Siboney Reserve Cigars. Now, this is not my brand. This is a happy coincidence. Again, Siboney means something from Cuba. That brand existed in Cuba in the 1950s. And the Cuban Revolution with Castro happened in 1959, and the brand went away, like many things did. But it was brought back in the same year that Barbara and I were working out our winery plans. And in 2019, we, after coming back from Cuba thinking we wanted to do this, AJ Fernandez is the cigar company in Nicaragua. Those are Cuban seed cigars grown by Cuban artisans in Nicaragua. So we asked for permission to be able to sell that line.
Okay.
And they said yes.
Nice.
So we have a retail license, and that's that is the basis for our program. They happen to be very good cigars too, and they've been consistent. It's been almost 3 years now that we're doing this. So it's become a part of who we are and what we do, because it helps us make, again, these cultural connections, these agricultural connections, these historic connections that are timeless, and we don't ever want to forget that. I mean, Valdi, he has no tractors. He doesn't have diesel. He's using oxes to pull a skid to bring in his harvest.
Wow.
And yet he makes one of the most highly regarded products of its kind in the world. What is that?
Yeah.
Well, we think it's three things. We think it's location, terroir. We think it's experience. And we think it's passion.
Right.
And with those three things, that's what we came out of there thinking. There's really no excuse. If you can find the right place and you can do the work that you are training yourself to do, and you can do it well, then you'll be successful. That's our plan.
You know, I don't think those words can be said any better than what you just said right there. Because in this industry, you have to have the passion, you have to have the drive, you have to do all that. And if you don't have it, why do it? And I think that's, man, sorry. Yeah, got kind of a little choke up, folks. Okay, I'm sorry about that. I like that story. That was a very amazing story. And man, I don't even know what to say. I'm literally speechless. Seriously, I'm trying to feel this here, and I'm speechless.
That's why there's music.
So let's change gears here now. So where do y'all see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years now?
A lot of it depends on the vineyard. I'll say this, and I don't mean just our vineyard, but the High Plains. Texas is at a very important point. We had a beautiful trip last year with Doug and Tom Reed. We went to Spain and we went to France, but I had never really been to Spain to go see to see Rioja and all the old vines there. It looks very much like the hill country. It's rolling hills. It's beautiful. Everywhere that you see cedar here, you see vineyards there.
Oh, okay.
So they've been at it for hundreds of years. Spain and Texas are the same size, right? They're roughly, geographically, they're the same size. We have 10,000 acres of vines in Texas. Spain has over 2 million acres of vineyards. That's why they can present a beautiful bottle of Rioja to HEB for less than we can and for more than we can, because they can play both sides of quality as well as selection.
Right.
So we think about that a lot. We think that I think for sure the most important steps that Texas can take are based on estate wineries, getting control of and working directly with growers to express what is possible. And I think that if Barbara and I bring anything to this industry, we know what's possible with great wine. We've tasted it, we've seen it, we've worked with it in many other places, and just the first 5 years that Barbara's working with it here, it shows a lot of promise. That's what makes our job here so easy. It's because I know what we've got in barrel, I know what we've got in bottle, and I know what's possible.
Right.
I agree. I'm
just waiting for the boss to answer. That's all I'm waiting for.
It almost starts to sound cliche, but great wine is made in the vineyard. So as our vineyards improve and as our growers, improve their standards and how they're farming their vineyards, you think about it. We have some growers who have 600 acres, 1,000 acres of fruit. They have 20 varieties, 30 varieties. Every variety is grown differently. It has a different bud break. It ripens at a different time. You have to farm it. The canopy is different. All of the management is different. So this is not an easy process. And, we've worked very hard to work with our growers and have relationships. We consider them to be partners in what we're doing. And I specifically love working with growers who are happy to kind of go the extra mile for what I want to try and express from their vineyard. We work with some late ripening varieties, even in Texas. We harvest them in mid-October. That's very late. That makes a long season for us. We start in the hill country in July. We end in October, and we're not done in October. We still have a lot of work to do getting into barrel and then even just preparing for the next season. But when I have a grower who has 1,000 acres of grapes and I have one variety that I know is not ready to go when everybody else has harvested it, and they say, we'll leave it here for you. We have to leave because we now have to go harvest our peanuts. Mm-hmm. We need 3 days notice to come back and harvest your fruit. But they let me do that.
That's nice.
They let me do that. They let me just take the time and go up there and taste it. And when I feel that it's ready, I can ask them to come and pick it now. And they do that. And I appreciate that. That means everything to me because it allows us to provide a different expression of that variety in Texas that I think is the most beautiful one. And it's everything. And I think we're getting there. Everybody's starting to see that makes sense. But I think that's where our biggest improvement is going to be in the vineyards, in estate wineries. And that's just going to continue to show what Texas can offer in Texas wines.
That is well said. I like that. I really do. Well, Barbara, Miguel, I really, really appreciate y'all allowing us to come out here and sit down and talk with y'all. So from this point here, is there anything y'all want to say from y'all's heart that you want to let our listeners know? Is there anything that we haven't talked about that you want to discuss?
Well, we're just getting started, right? And we came to this site in 2022. Everything takes the time that it takes, and it's a patient business. I mean, you have to take things in season. So even getting used to working in this facility, finding the right talent, we have a great team. I can't tell you how good our team is and how we've relied on them. We've got very few people who work with us. We don't have a large team because I don't want us to get out over our skis. We talk a lot about this. We don't compete against anybody. Mm-hmm. We just compete against what we're capable of. So that has our entire focus. What else can we do better? What's more interesting? How can we express wine? How can we take Barbara's wine and match it with culinary? We think a lot about food and wine together. So it's more than just a wine tasting that you can get at Siboney. We have our club membership really excels at giving us a lot of energy. We do a lot of programs for them. But we also have public programs that are really unique experiences. You're sitting 3 days after we did a Father's Day pig roast and hosted a domino tournament here. We do that every month. Once a month, we have roasted a whole pig and hosted a domino tournament. We have a Cuban guitar player here, and that becomes an experience now that sells out all the time. And we do it because we love it.
Right.
It's a hard thing to execute. It's hard on the team. We're up at dawn. We're working days prior to that to get the buffet, but we do every bit of it ourselves. That's a point of pride. So you see a lot of that. You see a lot of this authenticity, a lot of the things that we want to do because not only can we do it, we love to do it.
Right. I'm taking away from y'all. Everything is your foundation that you have for this winery. It starts with the 4-letter word, and that's love. And I love it. Anything else you want to add to that, Barbara?
We love it too. And, we originally got started in Texas wine because we found that there was amazing wine being made in Texas, and it was being made by fantastic people and a wonderful community. And we were part of that in a different way. And, we feel that we're all in this together. We're all here to elevate Texas wine and to make sure that people understand that we have amazing wines in Texas. We have beautiful experiences to be had here and in other locations in Texas. And we would just invite everybody to come and join us and have a little bit of experience with us.
Nice. I like that. So where can our listeners find y'all at? So what's your physical address? Where you can find y'all online?
Well, Siboney Cellars is 4 miles west of Johnson City. That's at 281 and 290. It's about an hour west of Austin, about an hour north of San Antonio, and Johnson City and Blanco County are beginning to emerge as a factor in the wine industry in Texas. Fredericksburg, no question, that's the hub of the Hill Country. There's a lot of great wineries in that area as well. So if you come to the Hill Country, plan for a 2 or 3 day stay. It used to be that you could just come in and maybe just have an afternoon here, but there's so many things to see and do now.
2 or 3 days is not enough. I mean, even for us coming here for 5 days is not enough.
I agree.
Yeah, there's a lot going on out here. We've got some great restaurants in the area. There's just so many things. There's things for kids to do, so families are welcome. And other than that, our wines are available on our website. We're in a few select restaurants and other locations outside of Johnson City. Very small. We are a very small winery. We are very small productions, so we're not in massive distribution. But you can find us in a few places. But the best place, we invite everybody to come out and do a tasting with us. Our tastings allow you to hear a lot of stories. There are a lot more stories than what we talked about here today. And as Miguel said, we have the most amazing people working with us here in our tasting room and our production. And they're all just a joy. No matter who you're going to be with, you're going to have a wonderful time.
Nice. Well, I tell you what we're going to do is we're going to take a break now before we go into our education part. So we're going to step away for just a second, but our education part is going to be about blending and how you choose the grapes for blending. So, all right, folks, we're going to be right back for just a moment. So, cheers.
Hey, this is Jeff Cole from TexasWineLover.com. We're here with Will, Michael, and Jen from We Know Texas Vino.
And this is Amy Nemec with the Texas Wine Lover mobile app. We're wrapping up the interview and moving into the wine education portion of the episode, so stick with us.
Welcome back, everybody, to We Know Texas Vino, and we're sitting out here at Siboney Winery and Cellars. Cellars. I'm sorry. Folks, this is probably one of my favorite episodes we've done thus far. Miguel and Barbara here are probably two of the finest people you'll ever meet in this industry here. And they'll probably be very humble about it, but they really are. And just getting to have a chat with them, and it's just amazing. And their hospitality is also amazing. They just open their arms to me here, and guys, you got to come out here. I can't say any more than that.
How'd you like the Cuban sandwich?
I want to eat about 7 of those to go, so I can take them back with me, so I can take it to work.
Tomorrow we have Cuban sandwiches on Thursdays.
Oh, dang it!
And Mondays. So tomorrow's a good day. We're open 12 to 8 on Thursdays, and we press every Cuban sandwich to order. And it's the real thing. It's not it's not elevated or curated. It's an authentic sandwich, just nothing more than it has to be.
Okay, so I will rearrange all my schedules and let coordinate, and also let Narrow Path know that we're not coming in. It's because of y'all.
No, go to Narrow Path.
No, go
Please say hello to our
go
friends.
to Narrow Path. Tell them we said hi.
Okay. So this is my favorite part of doing this podcast right here, is doing the education. And before we started talking about this, I wanted y'all to know what we wanted to talk about, and it's blending. And people always want to know, how do you choose what you're going to do for blending? I mean, do you just say, okay, I don't have enough of this grape and then not enough of this grape, and we blend? Or are you trying to achieve a specific taste or flavor or smell? What does it go into blending wines?
So for me, some of the most famous and amazing wines in the world are blends. If you're drinking a wine from Bordeaux, you're drinking a blend. And what blending allows us to do in the winemaking process is to take a few different grapes, and if one is lacking something, if it's the attack, if it's the mid palate, if it's the finish, we can find another grape that will complement that. And then we can make a complete wine that is absolutely amazing. So our goal is always to make the most delicious wine possible. If I can do that with a single varietal, single vineyard, I always want to do that, because it allows me to show that this is of this place, it's of this time. It doesn't always work out that is the best wine. So for us, we have a few blends that we make all of the time, and these were intentional blends. We talked about Travis earlier. Travis is a GSM, Grenache Syrah Mourvèdre. We did not invent this. This is a blend that is historically known to work well together, and that is true also here in Texas. The percentages will vary because Mother Nature makes a lot of the calls.
Right.
And the fruit quantities and quality is different every year. So that is going to be a large part of what we're considering when we're making that blend. Do we need more Syrah? Do we need less Syrah? How much Grenache do we need? And sometimes, how much do we have? And in that event, we've made our Travis blend We try to make it every year, and Syrah is often the limiting factor to that blend. But when we have a year where Syrah is abundant, then we will not put more Syrah in that blend. We will make the blend beautiful as it should be, but not overwhelmingly of one grape or another, and we'll take that Syrah and make it into a single varietal. We have another blend that we do, which is called Quatre Rouge, which is 4 reds, and that does change year to year. And we have a foundation of what that blend will be. We have Tempranillo, we have Petit Verdot, we have Cab Sauv, we have Malbec. So we have a whole group of grapes that we know that we're going to play with, but we always ferment them separately. And this is a winemaker choice. So you could do a field blend. You could harvest it, ferment it together, and I've done that from time to time with Morvet and Grenache. So some of it depends on the timing of harvest. If I know I'm putting certain grapes into a blend, I might decide to co-ferment them if I have them coming at the same time. But with the way our harvests happen, sometimes you don't have everything on site at the same time. And I also like to ferment them independently and age them independently, because then I have a chance to taste them as they're becoming a finished wine and see what they actually are. And it may be surprising to hear that when we're doing blending trials and we have an idea of what we want to blend together, and oftentimes it's based on what a traditional blend is, and sometimes it's not. But anytime that you're blending one wine with another, we're working in small percentages, right? And we may start with 1%, or we might think, hey, I think 10% of this is really going to make all the difference in this wine and make it exactly what I want. And you put that 10% in, and it's not.
Right.
It's exactly the opposite of what you wanted. So then you start easing off of your percentages. So it's not linear. It's not a recipe. It's really just something that you have to play with and taste, and it has to be based on what you desire for that particular wine. What style are we trying to make?
It's not the most economical choice either, because as a small winery, it's tempting to take everything you've got at the end of the season, put it into one final batch, slap a funny label on it, price it, and sell it. We're trying to be a little more particular than that. So this Quatre Rouge it imposes a little bit of discipline, saying what can we do in just 4 grapes that creates a complete wine from this harvest. And her choices for what is included, that's one side of it. It's also what's excluded. We do reject things. We do take not just the percentage, but sometimes the grape itself, we may have had other plans for it. We in 2017, in fact, we remember that we were going to do 2 Tempranillos as single varietals. We got a great harvest from one of them. That was a beautiful expression of Tempranillo. The second one on its own, compared to that, it would have been a different light. It wouldn't have shown the grape to its best advantage. But in a blend, it created something beautiful and harmonious. So this Cab Tempranillo blend kind of came from that, which is it's historically also in Rioja. You can go back to many, many decades ago. Spain was taught to grow Cab basically by France, because France needed it when phylloxera hit, wiped out a lot of their vineyards. They needed a source, so they learned to cultivate Cab and send it to France. So some of the old Marqués de Riscal blends from the 40s, 50s, and 60s are 25, 30, 40% Cabernet.
Wow.
In addition to Tempranillo.
Interesting.
So there's basis for this as well, but it really is, if the science of winemaking is getting a single varietal right, certainly the art of it is the blend.
It's interesting. And that is one of the things that people always ask, how do you decide what you're going to do? And some of the stuff I hear that people do, they just like, okay, I want to make something unique. And I know there's sometimes some people will choose the grape, or let me rephrase this, the varietal, and they'll actually blend it just perfectly where it balances each other out. Like I've seen some where they will get something that's really heavy dry, and one that's not, and they get that perfect little balance. And the way I actually like to describe that balance is, how over in Mexico they got the cenotes, where you get the fresh water and the salt water coming in together, and it mixes perfectly, and it makes a mirror where you can't see which one's up or down. That's how I like to describe that. I've seen a couple wineries that do that, and it's just like, you drink it and you're like, this is amazing. And then they tell you like, oh, hey, this is, 75% Sangiovese, 25% Cabernet Sauvignon. And it's just like a perfect balance. Mm-hmm. And that's something that I can't wait to start tinkering with as blending, because it's going to be fun.
I think the challenge also for a winemaker is dealing with the calendar. I mean, Barbara talked about this. Our calendar starts in July for hill country and ends in October for high plains. So everything is coming in separately. You don't know in July that you're going to end up with this beautiful blend 25, 30 months later.
Right.
Everything is vinified separately.
Yep.
It's dealt with separately. Barbara's barrel work, I think, is we haven't had a chance to talk about it other than the structure of the space here. But barrels it's the spice cabinet of the winemaker, and it's a key element to, I think, the work that you do here. I think it's great work that you guys end up spending so much time on barrel work just to get it right.
Yeah.
The barrels are really important. They are the spice rack. We deal primarily with French oak barrels. We do use also some Hungarian. We've used some American on Tempranillo especially. But the barrel selection is important, and it's not just the type of oak. It's the cooper that we're working with. And we've been able to experiment over the years with different cooperages and different toast levels. And, you mentioned balance. Everything is about balance. The vineyard is about balance.
Yes.
The canopy and the fruit and the ripening, that's all about the balance. And in winemaking, it's about balancing your acids and your alcohol and your fruit and your tannin. So we're going to use a variety of different barrels. We're going to use a certain percentage of new oak on certain varieties that I think can handle it. There are some that I feel can't handle it. So we're going to use neutral barrels or barrels that have been used once or twice. And this is just part of going through the process and then tasting those and putting them together. And we have an example, and this isn't even a blend, but it is a blend, because when you're putting 20 barrels together, it's still some kind of a blend.
It is.
You've got to taste all of your barrels, and you've got to try them all together and decide what your best wine is. We did this with Merlot in 2019 from Neil Newsom, which is that there. This was an incredible harvest. We were trying to bring it in before this storm was hitting. It was a lightning storm all around us. Miguel was up on top of his truck with a tripod taking pictures.
That's the smartest moment of my life.
The rest of us were driving forklifts and the harvester and getting all the fruit in and freezing. The temperatures went from 100 degrees down to 40 degrees, which is why we look like we're freezing. But we harvested this Merlot. It all went into its barrels. We had 16 barrels. We aged it. We chose the best blend out of 10 of those barrels, and we put it into the bottle, and that was our 19 Merlot. It was a cellar selection. It was absolutely beautiful. We held 6 barrels back, and we thought we were going to put it into a blend. We thought we would do a Bordeaux blend. We've got this beautiful Merlot. We've got Cab. We have all these things we can do with it. So we aged it for another year. We sampled the barrels, and guess what? It was gorgeous. We weren't going to blend it.
You can't blend to that.
We made a reserve out of it. We made an amazing Stormbreaker with a beautiful original label that was a photograph that Miguel took that evening of the harvest. So even when we think we have a plan, that plan always changes. A lot of times we just let the wine inform us what it wants to be.
Yeah, that's awesome. I love hearing that story, and I hope people understand now what it takes to blend. Because, I'm ready to start blending myself, So, well, I'm going to do this, my closing. Sorry, I'm kind of speechless for a second there. So, every episode we always do a takeaway over here. And again, like I said earlier, y'all's foundation of this whole winery is all based off love. Y'all, from y'all's love of finding each other to the love of doing the wine, just the passion that y'all have. I really have to commend y'all on that. I mean, y'all actually are like textbook. I hate to say it that way, but textbook relationship right there. Okay, so I do apologize for that. And don't give me that look, Miguel.
Oh, he's speechless.
Oh yeah, he's turning a little red too.
That never happens.
Did I win a prize on that? Did I get a ring the bell?
I think so.
Oh man. Well, let me hit my sponsors right quick, and then we'll get to our wine quotes. Okay. So I want to give thanks to Texas Wine Lover. You know, obviously you're part of that Texas Wine Lover app. You know, such a great app. I tell everybody about it because especially with people who are starting to learn about Texas wine, and I tell them how many wineries are in Texas, and they download that app and they look at it like, I have to get started. And I was like, yeah, there's a lot of wineries here in Texas, a lot of really, really good wineries.
We love Jeff Cope. We met him over 10 years ago. Also, he was at the same time that a lot of the wineries were getting started. Jeff was just getting started too. He's a database guy, right?
Yes.
He was trying to organize, and he wanted to visit every single vineyard in the state. And fortunately, the state kept growing at a rate that forced Jeff to keep traveling. So it took a long time for him to finally make the claim that he had visited them all. But by the time he made the claim,
There
There were more.
Well, so that's where he has people like Ron and Neil and Lorinda, which just so happens, I'm going to call her out on this, okay? She actually sends me a message on Facebook. It says, hey, I need you to bring me some Siboney wine. And I'm like, okay, what's in it for me?
a cigar.
Oh, man.
We can work this out.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. And then, of course, my other sponsor, and have y'all heard of these people? It's called Fly with Wine.
I have heard of them.
So basically,
suitcase.
a little suitcase that has built in where you can put your bottles of wine in it, so it's protected. And it's actually really, really brilliant because, you know, if you take your wine, you're over, let's say we're in Europe, okay, and you ship wine over, you're going to have to ship what, UPS, FedEx, right?
Yes.
Which could take weeks to get here. But if you have a suitcase, you put it in the suitcase for the same amount of money you're checking in for UPS or FedEx, you can already have it. So when you land and you get your suitcase, you can have that bottle of wine immediately.
And it's totally safe.
And it's totally
well
safe.
protected.
Yes, it's very well protected. And so I've got one of those at the house. They even put my name on it. So it says We Know Texas Vino on it. It's an amazing suitcase. Nice. One of these days I'll get to use it. So, so now we're coming to the greatest part of this podcast. Okay. It is our wine quotes. So we do a wine quote at the end of every episode. We do at least two. So this first one here, I kind of came up with on my own self. Okay. If you walk a mile in my shoes, you'll end up in a winery. All right. And so I don't cuss a lot on this podcast. I try to keep it as very much G-rated as possible, but it happens every once in a while. So there's a cuss word in this one, folks. Okay. So I found a grocery list one day and it said wine and shit to eat with wine. I'm pretty sure that's my soulmate. Guys, this is We Know Texas Vino. I appreciate y'all letting us come in here and open your doors and allow us to taste your wine and stuff and just sharing your story. So again, thank you very much.
You're welcome anytime. We appreciate the time to have with you guys. We look forward to seeing you again.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yeah. Cheers.